All right, what's going on there, folks? Good evening, good afternoon, good morning. Depending on where you're at, it's the Earthmaster here on this Wednesday, November 30th, 2022 date. It's about 9:47 here out along the west coast here in California. 9:47 p.m., that is. 1.5 earthquake into the area, it looks like just south of the border into the Southern California region, the latest earthquake up there on the Earthquake 3D globe. So a lot going on here around the beautiful planet that we live on currently. And I kind of want to start off here in New Zealand, the North Island, New Zealand area. And I've been talking about this a lot far as looking for adjustment, looking for the catch-up phrase, so to speak, considering all the activity we've seen up north here over the past couple weeks. We really haven't seen any major adjustment here along the area. But looking here inland, North Island, New Zealand, we had a 5.4 earthquake earlier, about 2 o'clock and 3 o'clock in the morning time frame, into the area of North Island, New Zealand, and also a 4.1. So to me, it looks like, well, this is somewhat shallow earthquake activity, only about 9 kilometers, 7 kilometers deep for some of that earthquake activity. Not a big deal. But upon a closer inspection here, as we zoom into the area of North Island, New Zealand, it's situated within an area that kind of reminds me of Crater Lake up in Oregon. It's a volcano that's been pretty quiet for a little while. Filled in with a lot of water. And that's pretty much the same thing what's going on here at this area of the New Zealand area. Now, closer inspection obviously shows us that there's quite a bit of earthquake activity ramping up underneath this lake, Lake Taupo. So, is this just a lake? Absolutely not. It's a beautiful lake, the largest out here in New Zealand. But it's got a history with it. It is, in fact, a supervolcano, and it's number 5 or number 6 on the list of the world's most dangerous volcanoes. Of course, number 1 is going to be Yellowstone, right? The supervolcano. But this is a supervolcano we haven't really discussed too much here on this channel, but it's been having a lot of activity. Taupo super volcano, and this activity is happening right here at the caldera regions. There's a lot of activity kicking up here, and I kind of want to jump into the drums. Now, these are seismograph stations here that monitor the seismograph or the earthquake activity, and this station right here looks like it's centered right over. It looks like the what is this here? Taupo, right? Right here. It's listed right here on the bottom. So this is the most active station here that shows the highest level of readings across the seismograph drums. And you can see here the 5.4 earthquake that came into the Taupo area, the volcano area, followed up by a very, very intense earthquake swarm. And there's been probably a good 100 or more earthquakes following that 5.4. Only a certain amount listed here, of course, on the USGS and GeoNet. But this is somewhat of a major deal here with this volcano. It's been about what do we got here? About 1,800 years since the last eruption at Taupo volcano. It looks like here's a little bit of information here from the GeoNet servers. We're going to read over this just real quick. Taupo volcano first began to erupt over 300,000 years ago. It is very large and it has many vents. So just real quick, when we use the term supervolcano, we say that in relation to the volume that the magma chamber harbors. Like we wouldn't call the Mount St. Helens area a supervolcano because it's not. The magma chamber is very small in relation to, obviously this volcano in New Zealand, Yellowstone, Long Valley supervolcano. So that's what we use the term supervolcano for. The magma volume, the chamber, is very large and has many vents, most of which are now under Lake Taupo. Geological studies of Taupo show that the volcano makes up only the northern half of the lake and a small surrounding area, but there have been numerous eruptions from different sites within this large volcano. 1,800 years ago is the last eruption, the most recent eruption, and there is, a lot of concern about this volcano because it produces very violent eruptions. In fact, the last eruption there was the most violent eruption in the world in the last 5,000 years. So that kind of tells a lot. It was a complex series of events. The first phases of the eruption produced a series of 5 pumice and ashfall deposits over a wide area. There was a huge area affected there by the pyroclastic flow. Looks like about 20,000 kilometers. It filled all the major river valleys of the central North Island with pumice and ash. And of course, these deposits can still be seen today in many rivers, and in the North Island area, it looks like large amounts of the pumice went in flood. So this is kind of a big deal. This volcano went to alert level number 1. Alert level number 1 out of 6, I believe, back in September of this year. Now, number 1 means that there's some minor unrest occurring, and that there's no imminent eruption of a volcanic eruption. But of course, that's what they said about Mauna Loa here, like the day before, and all of a sudden, boom, the Big Island starts kicking up with volcanic activity. So, eruption hazard, depending on the volcano eruption style, and may include explosions. There's a lot of potential here for damage over a large area, including all that water. All the water that's there at the lake could pose a major, major hazard across the area. Now, Wikipedia, you can find a lot of info, folks, over across the net here in regards to Taupo volcano. This is not new. The activity is somewhat new. It kicked up back in September, and it alerted the geologists and whatnot to raise that level to a volcanic level 1. Here is the graph here. I don't know if you guys can see it. Hopefully you can. I tried to blow this up a little bit more, but look at Taupo volcano on the Wikipedia articles. You can see this pretty, probably a little bit better. But this shows a timeline here of events back in 2060, 2023, or no, 233, excuse me, and 260. The last eruption there. A lot of time has passed, 1,800 years. And the intervals here recently ring out to about 1,000 years or so. If you contribute these gaps in between these major areas, these very seismically hazardous volcanic timelines here, about 1,000 years is what they mention here on the intervals, and it's been 1,800 years. So things are, it's up there. It's kind of like the Cascadia subduction zone. Things are in that timeline of where things could pop off. I think we've been living in a very quiet period here, and I'm talking about since about our recent time. Maybe my dad's recent time, maybe my grandpa's recent time. But things have been much more violent and eruptive in the past. And with us being in that little quiet period, obviously, activity is going to kick up pretty soon. It's not going to stay quiet forever. Taupo volcano has not erupted for approximately 1,800 years. However, with research beginning in 1979 and published in 2022. Looks like the data collected over a 42-year period shows that the Taupo volcano is active with periods of volcanic unrest and has been for some time. There's been other times in the past here where we've seen earthquake activity kind of ramping up. But you got to think about this. How many times does it take before that's the big event? You know, is the magma chamber filled up enough? Rhyolite, this Taupo volcano erupts rhyolite, a viscous magma with a high silica content. If the magma does not contain much gas, rhyolite tends to just form a lava dome. However, mixed with gas or other steam, rhyolite eruptions can be extremely violent. Kind of a big deal. I would be super concerned if I seen something like this at Yellowstone or Long Valley supervolcano. So this thing's obviously waking up, and it looks like it on the volcanic explosive index, it harbored a level 8, which is very significant. It's a pretty big deal. Definitely a big deal. There's a lot of info, folks, and I'm not going to go over this because it would probably take a couple hours. But it's well worth the read. And GeoNet servers, Volcano Discovery, have a lot of information on it when it comes to this volcano. And they all refer to this extremely violent volcano. Not something to mess around with. When we see a significant earthquake activity swarm like that, right now the USGS only showing a 5.4 and a 4.1, but you go to the drums here. You go to the seismic raw data here over Taupo, and you can see obviously that there's a lot more than being reported by the USGS, but GeoNet is doing a pretty good job of reporting some of the earthquakes. But it's an ongoing swarm. And this is something to watch here pretty closely, as things are very interesting across the Pacific and the world right now. I think it's worth noting. Not doom and gloom. I hate bringing doom and gloom to the area, but I like bringing facts, and I like bringing information here to the area. A supervolcano eruption there with a lot of water in here would not be the best bet here for the North Island, New Zealand area at all. This area, I was already watching this area for potential earthquake activity, and a member here on the channel, Timothy here, mentioned about the ongoing swarm here at Taupo volcano, and I appreciate Timothy there for the information. As always, any information here that's, you may think that's not being reported here on the channel, forward it to me. And that's exactly what Timothy did, and I appreciate the forwarded information here. He lives in the Christchurch area of New Zealand, and I appreciate that member here being on the channel. So we'll watch it. Obviously, it's an ongoing deal. And looks like activity is still continuing here in the region. The latest earthquake of New Zealand shows a 3.6 there in the mix, right in that cluster of earthquakes, folks, right in the massive swarm that's taken place there around the Lake Taupo area. It's a supervolcano. It's a beautiful lake, obviously, but there's a reason why it's a lake. Gotta look behind the scenes here. It's kind of a big deal. A lot of earthquakes kicking up here over the last 24 hours, and literally within the last hour, things are ramping up significantly in that area. So just be on guard, and any other input that anyone may have to forward to not only this channel but to the viewers, please do so in the comments below, or you can also message us, email us on the earthmastermail@gmail.com, and we'll look at that info. Definitely worth checking out, folks. We're always talking about Yellowstone, Long Valley supervolcano, and some other super volcanoes. But this one right here, when you got a significant swarm like that kicking up right underneath the caldera, it's kind of hard to ignore. So watch that area very closely. I think we're in a quiet time, but I think that's going to change pretty soon. A 4.1 earthquake here within the last hour up around the Aleutian Trench of Alaska. Let's see what we got going on in Southern California. A little bit of activity on the Pacific side of the plate boundary. Nothing major going on across the San Andreas Fault for now. The southern segment looks pretty quiet. A couple small microquakes up and down the state here. And Ridgecrest area filling in from the 2019 earthquake activity with some microquakes and aftershocks. No major movement around the Long Valley supervolcano for now. That is up there on the list, folks, of dangerous volcanoes. It's definitely up there on the list. Stand by for just a second here. Long Valley supervolcano basically is number 2 for mapped the world's most powerful volcanoes. Of course, number 1 is Yellowstone. Number 2, Long Valley supervolcano. It looks like number 3, Valus Caldera. Caldera. Number 4, Lake Toba, Indonesia area. That's a big one. Number 5 is Taupo in New Zealand. And number 6, one in Japan. So, a couple of these are definitely noteworthy to watch here. Long Valley does have some swarms on occasion and continual uplift. By the way, let's bring up the GPS systems here around the New Zealand area of Taupo volcano. Unfortunately, obviously some other volcanoes here, but here around Lake Taupo, we got only one station that's just centered off here into the caldera, obviously, but pretty much within our swarming area, just to the southeast it looks like a little bit. But there is a gradual uplift of the land here since about, I would say about 2018, looks like. We got that turn upward trend of magma, obviously, infiltrating the magma chamber. Now, one of these sites here, stand by for a second here. Let me see if it's on here or not. But I was looking at the uplift of the caldera area, and it looked like it was uplifting around 80 mm per year, which would not be a small amount. Let's see here. The main volcanic hazard at Taupo is from a massive explosion, eruptive explosion, which could create a natural disaster of extreme magnitude. Now, this is definitely a big deal, given the size of the present magma chamber, and that its last eruption was the most severe worldwide in the last 5,000 years. So, I've heard about this volcano, but I haven't really noticed about the most recent activity. So this is definitely newsworthy. Looks like, however, some of the 29 eruptions of the various magnitudes in the last 30,000 years have been much smaller. Looks like many have been dome forming. But, there's always a risk of tsunamis when you have that type of event going on there underneath a major lake. Definitely a big deal, I think, for the New Zealand area and also the world. Let me see here. I was looking to see if I could find the accumulated, or at least the uplift rate here per year at the Taupo volcano, but man, I'm not seeing it here. I'm sure it's here somewhere, but I'm kind of overlooking it. But definitely, if you guys want to know anything about it, definitely check out the Taupo Volcano, and it's well worth the read, considering it's got a lot of activity kicking up right now. Definitely worth the read, and the uplift that's going on here over the last few years, showing a definite uplift there in the vertical department. And that's just a station right here. I can only imagine a little bit further to the northwest. Let's see what else is going on. Volcanoes. It kind of seems to be the main thing right now. Of course, the Mauna Loa volcano continuing its eruptive stage. Let's go ahead and check out the latest information here from Mauna Loa, the volcano on a big island. The latest updated information here from the USGS volcano sites. Looks like it was put out just earlier this afternoon time frame. It continues. Obviously, the eruption continues with 2 active fissures feeding lava flows down slope. The fissure 3 flows are traveling to the north, still moving towards the Daniel K Highway. Fissure 3 remains the dominant source of the largest lava flow. Looks like advance of the largest lava flow slowed between 7 a.m. and 12:30 p.m. Now it's entering into an area of like a plateau area where it will slow down a little bit far as that progressive rate. We'll watch for that for sure. The flows are reaching a relatively flat area and are beginning to slow down. As this happens, the lava flow will spread out and inflate. Forecasts indicate that it may take 2 days for lava flows to reach a Daniel K Highway. That's Saddle Road. Fissure 4 is still active with lava flows moving towards the northeast. A small lobe is moving to the east from Fissure 4 at a slower rate than the main area. So things obviously still continuing here on the big island with Mauna Loa. 1984, the last eruptive stage there. So, things kind of very active right now with volcanoes. And we may be entering into that period of where we're going to see this pick up quite a bit. All right, let's go ahead and check out earthquake activity. Aside from volcanic activity here, kind of got off track here, but Southern California, there's the activity down south. Northern California, not a whole lot happening here, just your gradual earthquake activity there around the Clear Lake volcanic field, which is Calpine hydrothermal operations. 2.1 near Shingletown, 18 kilometers deep here into the mountain range here, just outside of Redding. Oregon looks pretty quiet, so does the Pacific Northwest. Latest tremor map here tonight shows only 9 epicenters underneath the Medford area. That's the southern end here of the Cascadia subduction zone. Not a big deal whatsoever. Volcanic seismicity map around Mount St. Helens, right? 1980s when that kicked up. Let's go ahead and check out the latest seismograph view here of the earthquake activity at the Mount St. Helens area. It doesn't look like there's a lot. This is pretty much overblown in the amplitude department, but this one looks pretty reasonable. Over the last UTC date, last 36 hours or so, not a whole lot of earthquake activity. Just some very small microquake activity there at the Mount St. Helens area. All right, let's see what else we have here. Alaska. Aside from the Aleutian Trench movement up there, we got some activity around the Trident volcano. It's been an ongoing event here. This may be coming up to the couple years of volcanic eruptions. It's very possible. Could see this kick up worldwide. Pacific Plate here definitely kicking up pretty nicely. Last 30 days of activity shows a movement here across the area of the Trident volcano and a couple other volcanoes here. 406 earthquakes on the map over the last 30 days. Watch that pretty closely. Around the Japan area, got some earthquake activity earlier this evening, and also looks like a 4.8 latest earthquake there off the coast of Japan. 29 kilometers deep there into the Japan Trench. Mariana Trench, Izu Trench up north, pretty quiet for now. in the Philippines area. This thing is rocking and rolling earlier. Looks like we had a couple 4s. The latest map here shows a pretty good cluster of 2s and 3s across the area. This region showing quite a bit of uplift in earthquake, or uptick in earthquake activity in this area. So watch this region pretty closely. The Japan area looks like there may be a couple more earthquakes listed here on the map than what the USGS is showing. Some 4s and 5s in there as well. All right, down here across the Papua New Guinea area and New Zealand region, of course, the activity down there worth watching. We'll watch that pretty closely. Most of the activity confined to the Tonga area, 4.3 at almost 500 kilometers deep, and some other shallower activity north of Fiji. So a whole lot going on below the surface and at the surface. There's our earthquake activity there off just inland on the coast of Iran, excuse me. This activity mostly from this morning time frame. We did see one earlier this afternoon time frame with a 4.2 kicking off in that area. Not a whole lot through the Atlantic currently, but things right now are kind of all over the place. We did see some further activity up north in the Alberta area. USGS deciding not to show that movement. We did see some more 4s in the area of Alberta. I'm kind of wondering if the Earthquakes Canada map is going to show that. Stand by for just a second here while I pull that up. There's some of that activity there in the beautiful area of Alberta, Canada. Quite the swarm going on there. And again, we did see, bring in here a little bit, obviously there's a lot more than what the USGS is showing here. It's kind of a joke that the USGS only chooses to minimize the activity there. But there's a lot more magnitudes today. Looks like we've seen some activity within the 4.0 range. Again, 4.5, the most recent quake it looks like in this area. About 5 kilometers deep. Also a 3.2. So this area has seen a pretty good sequence of earthquake activity there. And it's all within a major field of wastewater injection wells and oil pumping operation fields, oil fields out there. And just like Texas, this earthquake activity will continue for many years to come. Definitely many years. Anywhere there's those operations, it takes place, folks. It's shown. The facts are there. This is not just making up data. This is all factual information. Texas area, a little bit of activity earlier this morning out there in the fields, the oil fields. Don't believe me? Just zoom in. There's a couple of the wastewater ponds out here. And those are not beautiful swimming pools in the desert of Texas, right? One might think, wow, a lot of desert out there. But zoom in, and I think you'll be surprised what you see out here. A lot of earthquake activity, and that's just that's over the last 24 hours. We could go back to last year, and this would probably shut down my computer because there's so many earthquakes. All right, let's see. What do we got for Yellowstone National Park here? Not a whole lot going on currently here at this supervolcano. I think this one right here is kind of the least of our concern currently. I don't believe the magma chamber is filled up enough to produce any significant eruption. But these other volcanoes, I think Long Valley supervolcano, Taupo, pose a risk here in the future, possibly seeing eruption activity. But no earthquake activity really to report, other than a couple small microquakes here over the last few hours, but that's about it. Solar ham site. This is solar weather activity. G1 class storm predicted, or at least forecasted. Kind of stretching up there a little bit. Looks like earlier this afternoon time frame, we did peak out there. The KP index of about 5. And auroras up there, kind of streaming up into the Canada region, and Alaska getting in on the activity as well, you lucky ducks. Goodness, last time I went up to Alaska there, middle of winter time, that's kind of what I went up there for. And it was cloudy and ice crystals falling out of the sky with no auroras. So I was kind of disappointed, but eventually I will get to see this. I think it's kind of on our bucket list here. I think all of us would love to see the auroras up in the sky. But tonight, looking pretty probable up there into Alaska and Alberta, BC region as well, Northwest Territories, all looking possible for the auroras tonight. Far as solar flare activity, that's kind of the quiet zone for now. Not even for sure why I'm mentioning it, but we are watching this region here on the extreme eastern section here of the sun. Southeastern section got a pretty large sunspot, and at least from here it looks somewhat dynamic, and I think that may be worth watching in the coming days. Here's a little bit more better view of the features there of that sunspot, the magnetic fields kind of flowing across the area. We'll watch that as that comes into view. There was a pretty significant far side explosion, a CME, not Earth directed obviously, but it did produce a massive CME on the far side of the sun. Definitely not Earth directed whatsoever. But we'll keep an eye on it. There is another coronal hole right here. It's not named, but it's going to be this feature right here on the sun that will be rotating into view. And depending on what it does here over the next couple days, it may be geo-effective as well. Current conditions there across the real-time solar wind chart shows a little bit of declining speed conditions there. Still elevated though, roughly around the 600 to 650 range. And the density chart here all over the place. I'm still not sure what's going on with this kind of odd reading. It kind of kicks up and then it just drops off dramatically. Kind of a weird deal. But either way, things kind of kicking up here tonight for those lucky folks there at the higher latitudes. All right, folks, I am going to jump off here. And again, just what do we got? 3.3 coming into the New Zealand area once again. By the way, I do have a station keyed up around the Taupo volcano there in the North Island, New Zealand area. It's a station called Black Stump Farm. Now, it's a HHE station monitoring seismic data there, very close to the Taupo volcano on the North Island of New Zealand. I'm going to show you guys this real quick. There's Barrett. Here's Petrolia. This station right here called Black Stump Farm. That's going to be an earthquake coming in there to the New Zealand area. And I believe that's going to be the 3-pointer that's just coming in, the 3.3 in the North Island, New Zealand area. So things still rocking and rolling down there. It's a super volcano. And just because it's had earthquake activity in the past, periods of seismic unrest, doesn't mean that it's just going to go away and that's it. These periods could be leading to something much bigger. And, I think Mauna Loa there was an obvious sign. A lot of USGS folks said that there's no imminent sign of an eruption of Mauna Loa volcano. None. And then the next night, boom, it starts erupting. So to forecast these even a little, I shouldn't say little because it's one of the world's most active volcanoes, biggest, excuse me. But to forecast that, one never knows. One really never knows what's really going on below us and what's really built up in certain areas. Stuff we know about and stuff we don't know about. So whenever I see some major swarming at any supervolcano, it's definitely worth calling out and paying attention to. So watch the Taupo volcano very closely. Earthquake activity is still continuing. And the GeoNet servers is a very good site to check out. Definitely worth, excuse me, paying attention to. Also, I got a member here on the channel that has a pretty good setup of some links and also various sites there to his webpage. Kind of finding it here real quick. It's actually nzquakes.online is a site that Timothy has set up that has quite a bit of volcanic drums, views of volcanoes, and stuff to do with New Zealand. Not only New Zealand, but Hawaii as well. And Timothy has a pretty cool site set up. nzquakes.online is their site. Check it out. Pretty cool, pretty knowledgeable, I think, there in the internet field there for creating a bunch of different sites on this web page. Check that out if you get a chance. So in the meantime, we'll definitely keep an eye on everything that's going on around the globe right now. Again, I think we're just coming out of the quiet period into a very active phase of volcanic and earthquake activity. I think there's a lot of interesting events coming up here soon that we need to be on guard for. So have a good night, folks. We will catch you guys a little bit later on. And whatever you do, just make sure you stay safe. That's the best thing you can do. Be prepared for any type of event. We'll catch you guys tomorrow sometime. Have a good night. Peace out.